Okay, hi all. Last tutorial we were talking about mixing drums. We went through quite in depth about what a filter was and how compression worked and how a gate worked. I'm now going to talk you through some of the basics of how to mix in a bass and acoustic guitar in our test track, everything you need. So we're going to start off with the bass. Now the important thing to think about the bass is what frequency band we're trying to use in our mix, because the mix, you've got low frequencies, high frequencies, mid frequencies, and you've got to think, where's my bass meant to be sitting? And obviously we're naturally drawn to the low frequencies, but we also have to think about what else is in our low frequency band. So we've got the bass drum and the kick drum, and then the bass guitar. Now those two are going to conflict in some of the low frequencies, and obviously if the bass guitar is too loud, we're not going to hear the punch from the kick. So there's certain things that we need to take into account there. But the first thing we need to do is listen to the bass. So this is clearly a DI bass, and it's got a very clear thuddy kind of warm bass tone. But what good practice is normally, if you've DI'd a bass guitar, is to put it through an amp simulator just to round off the sound slightly, and you'll hear what I mean by round off the sound. So if we go into our amp simulator, the Neo effects rack is probably the best one to choose for this application. So it defaults to load up into this space. Now these will only work, Neo FX Rack will only work in E106 where we've got the Neo FX boxes. It won't work when you go over to the studio, so it will you just won't hear the effects. But let's have a look. So if we right click in this space, we can put in different amps and different simulators and different effects. But we want to put in the tweed bass, so especially crafted for the bass tones. And now if we press play again, I'm just going to bypass it. Just turn the treble up there, maybe just turn the volume up so you get it to a nice normal level. Okay, so it's much deeper sound now, and it's much rounder. It kind of sits there in the middle of our mix. But we also need to think about that now with the kick drum, because if we play the two together. So okay, there's not too much crossover, but what we could really ideally do with is actually taking out the frequencies that the kick drum we've boosted in the kick drum, so they kind of balance out. So we actually make a space in our mix. We're making space in the frequency range of our mix here for that kick drum to come through. So if we go back to, let's just compare the two. So we've got 75 hertz there boosted. So if we go to about 75 hertz with this 2, bring that down. You might just turn the Q down so it's not too obvious, but we're going to turn it down quite a lot just to let our kick drum sit in the mix. It's very, very subtle, but it does make a big difference. And so that's what the main things you need to take into account when you're mixing the bass guitar. Just making sure that you've got the right frequencies there, you're not getting too much fret buzz, and that it's not clashing with the kick drum. Until we start putting it in the rest of the mix, we're not really gonna know much about the level, so we can just kind of leave the level generally set. You might want to get all the kit together. Good, sounding nice. Okay, right, we're now going to switch hats and not think about the bass and the drums now. We're going to think about the acoustic guitar. Now, the acoustic guitar needs to be treated really, really differently, and there's some fundamental concepts we need to think about. So, let's first have a listen. So, we need to find a section of the track. I think that should be... Okay, a really nicely recorded acoustic guitar there, really balanced sound, right down the middle of our mix at the moment. And so by that I mean we can hear it in both headphones, and it's in the center of our mix. There's not a lot of space in between there, and we're thinking about, when you think about mixing, you have to think about the middle and then the sides. If you can imagine hearing something in your left ear and your right ear, and then hearing something straight down the middle, we kind of treat them in middle and sides. So that concept will become more apparent as we go on and we think about mixing the vocals in. But if we just think about the first things we need to do in terms of EQ, good practice on all of the non-bassy or low frequency instruments is to put in a low shelf, because we're not cutting them. We're not using a high pass filter, which would look like this. We're not doing this to the guitar. We're just turning the frequencies down ever so slightly, and just by doing that, you can hear we've cleaned up the sound. We've got rid of the what we might call the muddy frequencies at the lower end of the guitar. Let's just have a listen to that. Now, a very reasonable comment to make about that would be, well, we're losing the body of the instrument, so what effect's that going to have on the mix? But because we've got such a thick mix here with the bass, the drums, and that other processed guitar sound, we can afford to drop off these lower frequencies just to clean up the sounds, and that's good practice on most of them. If you have to think about which sounds are more important in your mix and where you want them to have the body, but you could also turn down the high frequencies ever so slightly, just losing a bit of the brightness, just so we can allow other things to sit on top, like the vocals, maybe like that processed guitar sound, just to sit above it in the mix. Now let's have a little listen to that. Okay, we might have overdone it, but we'll have to have a listen back to the mix later. So if we just now solo all of these. You can hear instantly, by taking out those lower frequencies, those muddy frequencies, it actually sits it better in the mix because it feels like it's connected with the rest of the instruments in that mix. Okay, so let's move on and think about what else we can do. Other things to do to an acoustic guitar, people like to put on some chorus. That will set it quite far back in the mix, because what a chorus does is essentially simulate more than one instrument going at the same time. And if we just have a little... we put in the Neo effects rack and put in the Supernova chorus here, you'll hear what I mean. So if I turn down and up the depth, you'll hear how it sounds like there's more than one guitar playing, and as I change the depth, they go more and more out of tune. And you can do that, but in this mix I don't think it's appropriate, because it kind of hollows out the sound, and we really do need that acoustic guitar to give us a bit of presence during that verse section. So we won't put that in for now. But another cool effect that we can do, and you'll really be able to hear this in a second, is to create an automatic double tracking effect. So to simulate as if two guitars were playing, but using one performance. Now, it's quite an abstract concept, thinking, okay, well, how are we going to make it sound like two guitars? Well, if we think about the actual recording process, if we were to record two guitarists, they'd be playing slightly out of time with each other. Maybe the instrument tuning would be slightly out of tune with each other, ever so slightly. But we can certainly mimic that first thing by putting them ever so slightly out of time with each other. Now, we're talking milliseconds, so that you wouldn't be able to notice the difference between the two sounds happening, and we can use that using a delay. So if we go to the audio effects, Anitas effects, and delay, we're going to use delay for a lot of things over the course of these tutorials, but for now we're just going to use it to create an automatic double tracking effect, where one guitar goes through the left hand side and one guitar goes through the right hand side. So I'm introducing you to delay a bit unconventionally. So I'll bring down the feedback and I'll bring down the crossfeed. So at the moment we don't actually want there to be any feedback in the delay systems at the moment. I'll show you what we mean. So if we just put the normal delay on it, it would sound a bit like this. and we can hear that it sounds like an echo, and the more feedback you have, the more and more echoes you get. So I'll turn them up and you'll hear it actually getting louder gradually. And where that's quite an interesting sound that we could use sonically in other purposes, for the moment we don't really want to do that. So we're just going to turn the feedback down because we don't want it to keep going round and around and around and building up or echoing and decaying out slowly. We actually want to make sure that we've only got it coming once out of one side and then once out of the other. So all we're doing is creating a quick sample delay. So if I turn this mix right down, so this is going to be the dry sound. So there's going to be just the normal sound. Just as we're hearing it now, and you actually hear, if I leave this pressing play here, you'll hear the echo in the right hand side. Okay, but what we're trying to do here is one on the left, one on the right. So this one's going to be mixed all the way up. We turn the crossfeed down, the feedback down, and instead of it being tempo synced, we want to manually do it. So you have to press the button a few times until it turns off. And so we're going to turn, it doesn't really matter about this one because the mix is all the way down, but for the sake of argument, we'll turn that all the way down to 0. Now, remember when I was talking about milliseconds, 500 milliseconds sounds about this far apart. So you can clearly hear that they're too far apart. We want them to sound almost as one, but slightly different. I hope you're ready for this. It's going to sound awesome in a second. Okay, a bit too far apart, maybe put them a bit closer together. Okay, so we can clearly hear in the left and right hand side, they sound very, very distinct. You can hear kind of two guitars playing, if you will, which is exactly what's happening. So now, if I press play, I'm going to bypass it and listen to how wide the mix gets spread out. So it's really kind of pushed out those edges of the mix, and it leaves the center for the vocals and other things to sit in. So it's a really good effect, that automatic double tracking effect, or ADT. There's a number of different ways we can do it, and that's just one of them to show you. So far in this tutorial, we've just covered the bass, making sure we're equalizing that out, and also using a high shelf and a low shelf on the guitar to clean it up, and we'll do that with some of the other instruments, and also making sure also putting an automatic double tracking effect on, using the delay, using those settings. And so if we listen to all that together that we've done so far. Okay, and if I was to turn off all of those VSTs, so using that E button, let's listen to what it sounds like without and with. Okay, so we've really opened up our mix now, and we're getting a much brighter sound, a much clearer sound. Everything doesn't feel so pushed and squeezed in the middle. Okay, well, thank you for listening to this one. In the next tutorial, we'll be kind of picking up the other process guitars and also picking up a problem which is in this fuzz guitar. Okay, thanks for listening.